Tonight, a new twist on President Trump's trade war as he sets sights on a tech giant.
If they're going to sell it in America, I want it to be built in the United States.
The president now demanding that Apple iPhones be manufactured in the U.S., threatening a 25% tariff if it doesn't happen. The EU also in the president's crosshairs. The massive tariffs they could face as soon as next month. Chilling new details in the Israeli embassy murders, how one of the victims tried to crawl away, the suspect's movements before and after the shooting, and the heightened police presence across the nation. President Trump versus Harvard heating up. The school is suing the Trump administration as a federal judge blocks a move to ban the school from enrolling international students.
It goes back to what my family and I have been standing on since day one of all of this. We still want accountability.
It's been 5 years since George Floyd was killed by then police officer Derek Chauvin. How his death has forever changed the city of Minneapolis and the country. Verdicts for the 10 people charged for the 2016 robbery of Kim Kardashian. And Billy Joel cancels his summer tour. The major health diagnosis that led to the rock legend's move.
We have apprehended a dangerous experiment.
He's famous for mischief and mayhem. Now, a reimagined Stitch is returning to movie screens. Our sit down with the stars of Lilo and Stitch.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Ramos, in for Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin with President Trump once again reigniting his global trade war, this time threatening a new wave of tariffs targeting America's allies and one of the most valuable companies in the world, one that makes technology you might just have in your hand right now. The president says the U.S. will impose a 50% tariff on the European Union beginning June 1st if they can't reach a deal in the stalled trade talks. And he's warning Apple, the maker of iPhones and Macs and other electronics manufacturers, that the U.S. will impose a tariff of at least 25% unless the companies agree to move production to the U.S. The stock market responded today with losses across the board, the Dow falling 256 points. We're speaking with a tech industry expert about what it would mean for Apple to move manufacturing here to the U.S. But first, we go to the White House, where the president was once again pressed about his tariffs potentially costing Americans jobs and money. Here's Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce.
Tonight, President Trump reigniting his trade war, threatening to impose a 50% tariff on European products and warning American tech giant Apple it will face a 25% tariff if iPhones aren't fully made in the U.S.
It's time that we play the game the way I know how to play the game.
The announcement injecting fresh uncertainty into the markets, stocks sliding. Trump says ongoing trade talks with the EU, one of our largest trading partners, are, quote, going nowhere. Hoping to light a fire, the president now says that 50% tariff will go into effect a little over a week from now on June 1st.
We'll determine that.
Is there anything they can do, sir? Is there anything the EU can do?
I don't know. We're going to see what happens, but right now it's going on June 1st, and that's the way it is. No, they haven't treated us properly. They haven't treated our country properly.
And for the first time today, he's zeroing in on an American company, saying he will slap a 25% tariff on Apple if iPhones are not fully manufactured in the U.S., and threatening to do the same to other smartphone producers too, like Samsung.
The iPhone, if they're going to sell it in America, I want it to be built in the United States. They're able to do that.
But experts say they're not, that fully moving production to the U.S. isn't realistic.
It's a fairy tale that Apple could ultimately take production of iPhones and move that to the U.S. The reality is that it would take tens of billions of dollars even to move 5 to 10% of the supply chain.
That cost then passed on to consumers. By one estimate, manufacturing iPhones in the U.S. could nearly triple its cost, up to roughly $3,500 per phone. Apple has yet to respond, but CEO Tim Cook has already promised to invest $500 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years. But that's not enough for the president.
He said he's going to India to build plants. I said, that's okay to go to India, but you're not going to sell into here without tariffs. And that's the way it is.
As Americans brace for potential price hikes, tonight Trump is facing questions about whether he's profiting off the presidency after his exclusive dinner last night for top investors in his cryptocurrency venture. Critics condemning it as a brazen example of pay for play. More than 200 crypto traders, including many from overseas, spending more than $140 million collectively to gain access to the dinner. We pressed the White House about the ethical concerns.
The Trump family is making money off of this. So can you just explain how is this not the president using the office to enrich himself?
All of the president's assets are in a blind trust, which is managed by his children. And I would argue one of the many reasons that the American people reelected this president back to this office is because he was a very successful businessman before giving it up to publicly serve our country.
And Mary Bruce joins us now. Mary, late today we got news about the U.S. Steel Nippon merger. What's the latest there?
Yeah, Stephanie, tonight the president is clearing this merger between U.S. Steel and the Japanese steelmaker Nippon. He says that this partnership will create at least 70,000 jobs and add $14 billion to the U.S. economy. He also says the headquarters will remain in Pittsburgh, but the details of the deal tonight, Stephanie, are still unclear.
All right, something else to look out for. Mary Bruce for us there at the White House. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
For a closer look at what President Trump's threat to tax iPhones could mean, we want to bring in senior reviewer for The Verge, Victoria Song. Victoria, great to have you with us. So Trump has been pushing for Apple to move its manufacturing to the U.S. since his first run for the White House in 2016. Is the company likely to change anything now, even with the threat of a 25% tariff?
Absolutely not. Just because there's no financial incentive for them to do so. Even with a 25% tariff on the iPhone in particular, it's still more cost effective for them to produce overseas. Now, are they making some changes to their supply chain? Yeah, it does sound like they are exploring options in India and in Southeast Asia like Vietnam. But the fact of the matter is that we just do not have the manufacturing capacity in the US, nor do we have a skilled labor force for that specific task. Now, China, for example, they've been spending the last 30 years beefing up their workforce to be super talented, skilled, and ready to make these gadgets and these products. Their infrastructure is made for that. We just don't have that here. And our capacity in the US to make consumer electronics like the iPhone, it's pretty decimated compared to where it used to be.
Is that what's stopped the company from full-fledged manufacturing here in the U.S.? Because we know the company has looked into manufacturing here. So is that the big blocker for them?
It's one of them. Part of the problem is that, building a factory is really expensive as well. Training up a workforce is expensive. But the fact is that when you say made in America, oftentimes we mean assembled in America. The products themselves, the components that are inside of them, the millions of, or maybe not millions, but thousands of little things that make up the final product, they come from China in often cases. China has cornered the market on rare minerals that go into our electronic devices. So it doesn't even matter if it's assembled here. We're still going to be impacted by the tariffs in the cost of the final product.
Okay, is that how consumers could see the effects of all of this with the price going up? And how else could consumers be affected?
Well, price will definitely probably go up for consumers. And then, consumers could also be impacted by just other forces like the economy. It's likely that tariffs in this way will impact small businesses. It'll make bigger businesses like Apple are much more able to absorb the cost. But consumers in general, everything is going to get more expensive, not just the electronics. If you think about apples, you buy at the grocery store, or oranges, the plastic that goes into the packaging, that's also going to get tariffed because that's not made here. So for consumers, really, it's going to be whether they can afford certain things, whether companies that make their favorite products are going to be able to continue making them, especially if they're from indie brands. And then if we're thinking about big players like Apple, the prices are just you can expect the prices to go up.
In a world where so many of us have Apple products, we will see how this all plays out. Victoria Song for us this evening, senior reviewer at The Verge. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
A nearly 9-year ordeal has come to an end for Kim Kardashian. The 10 people charged in the shocking 2016 armed robbery of the reality TV star and businesswoman were handed their fates in a courtroom today. Ines de la Cuetara has the details from Paris. Ines?
Hey, Stephanie. Yeah, so we did get a sentencing in the trial of the 10 people accused of robbing Kim Kardashian back in 2016. There were 10 people on trial, 9 men and 1 woman. 8 of those people were found to be guilty, 2 were acquitted. Of the 8 found guilty, the longest sentence was an 8-year prison sentence for the ringleader of the group. There were also 3 7-year sentences and 1 4-year sentence for the only woman in this case. However, because so many of the defendants had served time in pretrial detention, they will not be returning to prison. None of them will be returning to prison, and they will actually be walking free this evening. So a remarkable turn of events there. The judge commented on that. He said he recognized that the sentencing was relatively lenient. He says he took into consideration the fact that it's been 10 years since the robbery happened. He also took into consideration the defendants' age. Many of them were in their 60s and 70s, and one of them has Parkinson's disease, another has cancer, one of them is nearly deaf, and so the judge said he felt ethically he couldn't sentence them to any more time in prison. We did get a statement from Kim Kardashian. She wasn't here in Paris today, but she did issue a statement saying she is essentially pleased, grateful that justice has been served, that she will, this is something that has had a lasting impact on her life, but that she does now plan to turn the page and that she will pray for healing for all. Stephanie?
Our thanks to Ines de la Cuetara there in Paris. We're learning new details about that horrific plane crash into a 샌디에이고 neighborhood tonight. Investigators say this video caught on a home's security camera shows the moment the plane clipped a high-tension power line and then slammed into that neighborhood. And 24 hours after running for their lives, some families are returning to what remains of their homes, trying to process the extent of the damage. Investigators say that some key airport systems were not working at the time of the crash. Our Trevor Alt reports from 샌디에이go.
Tonight, federal investigators revealing new details on that deadly 샌디에이go plane crash. Horrific video showing the moment the jet clipped power lines and slammed into a neighborhood, exploding in a fireball. Late today, the NTSB saying 2 systems were not functioning at the airport where the plane was about to land as the pilot battled heavy fog. The weather reporting system that would have given the pilot landing conditions and the lights that would have illuminated the runway, both out. In his final transmission, the pilot saying he was going to try to land despite low visibility.
All right, doesn't sound great, but we'll give it a go.
The pilot did not report any problems to air traffic control, and he did not declare an emergency.
The NTSB now confirming all 6 people on that plane were killed. Well-known music agent Dave Shapiro owned the jet. His agency Sound Talent Group saying he and 2 other employees died in the crash. And tonight, as this military neighborhood now picks up the pieces, stories of life-saving heroism on the ground.
Come on, let's go! Let's go! Go!
Gilbert Gonzalez rushing to help Ben and Srujana McCarty, evacuating their children and 2 dogs to safety after the plane ripped through the front of the family's house.
Climb the ladder! Climb the ladder!
The McCartys returning home today for the first time since that harrowing escape, grateful for their neighbors.
We owe all 6 of our lives to him right now. If it wasn't for him and the other men who just ran up, oh my goodness, he says I'm not a hero, but he really was. He really was. We wouldn't be here right now.
So glad they're okay. Our thanks to Trevor Alt. Police arrested a 6th person today related to that New Orleans jailbreak. Trevon Williams is now facing charges for allegedly helping his fellow inmates in that brazen jail escape 1 week ago. Prosecutors today also charged a maintenance worker at the jail for allegedly aiding in the inmates' escape. 10 inmates escaped from the jail. 5 are still on the run. There are chilling new details tonight about the deadly shooting outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington, D.C. Wednesday night. 2 Israeli embassy staffers, a young couple about to be engaged, were shot in the back. Investigators say the suspect had posted messages online denouncing Israel for its war with Hamas. Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas is in Washington.
Tonight, heightened security at Jewish houses of worship in the wake of the assassination of those two members of the Israeli embassy.
No one should be fearful to go to a Jewish event, to go to a synagogue. It's absolutely infuriating.
This as the FBI continues its investigation into the life of suspect Elias Rodriguez, trying to make certain that he's not part of a terror network.
Free Palestine!
We're continuing to investigate and contact the subject's associates, his family members, and co-workers.
Authorities also examining the suspect's social media posts. Sources telling ABC News the suspect had posted about the Israeli-Hamas conflict since 2023, allegedly calling for violence against Israel. And tonight, critical questions remain about why the suspect allegedly chose that venue. Investigators disclosing that he said he bought a ticket for the event at the Capitol Jewish Museum 3 hours before it began. A federal criminal complaint laying out chilling details, revealing that the killer fired more than 21 bullets from a 9mm handgun that police say they recovered. The complaint describing surveillance footage that allegedly shows the killer leaning over the couple after shooting them in the back and repeatedly firing. Tonight, family and friends heartbroken. Yaron Lashinsky, a dual German-Israeli citizen, and his girlfriend Sarah Milgram, who was originally from Kansas, about to be engaged. Lashinsky had just bought the ring last week.
Yaron was the kind of guy that would have conversations with anybody about anything. I will forever think of him as a diplomat on par and a peacemaker at heart.
Sarah was so empathetic and talking about how the people in Israel are suffering, the Palestinians in Israel are suffering. She was an incredible person, and she will be really missed.
Absolutely tragic. Our thanks to Pierre Thomas in Washington. The showdown between President Trump and Harvard University is escalating. 24 hours after the administration barred the school from enrolling international students, a federal judge blocked the order. Harvard University's president called the order a critical step to protect the rights and opportunities of our international students and scholars, and that was in a letter to students. President Trump warned that other schools may face similar punishment. Here's senior White House correspondent Selena Wang.
Tonight, the escalating battle between Harvard University and the Trump administration.
Harvard's going to have to change its ways. And so are some others.
Today, a federal judge temporarily blocking President Trump's move to ban Harvard from enrolling international students, writing, the university showed it would cause immediate and irreparable injury. The Department of Homeland Security had ordered that existing foreign students at Harvard must transfer or lose their legal status, stating it is a privilege, not a right, for universities to enroll foreign students. Harvard suing the Trump administration, the university's president stating, "We condemn this unlawful and unwarranted action." Harvard's former president warning the move will deter the best and brightest from studying in the United States.
We attract extraordinarily talented people, and we are giving that up because of our own choices.
And for now, the future of Harvard's nearly 7,000 international students, about a quarter of the total student body, hangs in the balance.
Still very much in shock, lots of uncertainties right now.
We're being used as poker chips in a battle between Trump and Harvard. It is so cruel.
Our thanks to Selena Wang for that report. Joining us with some perspective on what the Harvard community is feeling in the wake of today's federal ruling that blocks the Trump administration from barring international students is Harvard history professor Maya Jasanoff. Professor, thank you so much for your time and for joining us. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said Thursday that Harvard brought this on itself by allowing anti-Semitism and the Chinese Communist Party specifically to, quote, infiltrate and influence campus life. How do you respond to that accusation?
It's a joke. It just bears absolutely no correlation to the reality of what happens at Harvard. Anti-Semitism is a real problem worldwide, and there have been reported instances of it on the Harvard campus, as indeed across the country. But let's not kid ourselves about the way in which that is being used as a pretext for a much bigger assault on higher education and, frankly, the pillars of liberal society.
And you're a professor in Harvard's Department of History. How would scholarships be affected in your department and more broadly if the government were to prevail?
So something like 27% of all students at Harvard, many thousands, 7,000, are international students. And this is not just in my department or even my school, which includes Harvard College. It's the law school, the business school, across the whole university, the medical school. And every one of these students suddenly is going, if the Trump administration prevails, to risk having their visa status ended immediately. They're going to have to leave the country or find another place to study. And it's going to put to an end the projects that they're working on, in many cases in medical labs and so on. It's going to put to an end the relationships that they've built in the community and in this country. And above all, and this is the key point, it's going to put to an end a whole idea of what America represents for the world and in the world that Harvard and all of our universities have stood for decades.
So, Professor, the government has accused Harvard of, quote, promoting pro-Hamas sympathies and employing what it calls racist DEI inclusion policies. You've been at Harvard for almost 20 years. Have you seen evidence of either?
I haven't seen this at all. I should say I myself am partly of Jewish descent. And like many of my Jewish colleagues, I have flourished at Harvard. I was indeed an undergraduate there at a time when a high percentage of my classmates were Jewish. Harvard has become an increasingly inclusive institution over the decades. And again, it is a pretext in a much bigger attack on free expression, academic freedom, and the pursuit of inquiry and truth.
And here's something else the government is requesting that we want to get your take on. The government has demanded Harvard provide student backgrounds and all audio and video evidence of alleged criminal activity on campus, ostensibly committed when students have protested the war in Gaza. What do you believe are the government's motives in making such a request?
So there are statutory and regulatory conditions that come with the ability to host international students. But what the government is asking for goes way beyond anything that is laid out in the law. And indeed, this has already been recognized in the courts today with a temporary restraining order placed on the Trump administration's actions. I think what they're trying to do is a type of bullying or brinksmanship, if you will, where they are going way beyond the parameters of what the law allows in an effort to, try to shut down fundamental operations of our campus.
Yeah, and the university has said this is a blatant violation of the law and free speech rights. We will continue to follow this. Harvard history professor Maya Jasanoff, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you for having me.
A stunning announcement from singer Billy Joel, who revealed he's suffering from a brain disorder, forcing him to cancel his ongoing tour. We're now learning more about that diagnosis.
Tonight, a major health scare for legendary rocker Billy Joel, forcing him to cancel his entire tour. Joel, who was set to kick off a 17-show summer tour starting in Pittsburgh in July, revealing he's been diagnosed with normal pressure hydrocephalus, a rare brain disorder where excess spinal fluid connects deep inside the brain, causing problems with cognitive function like thinking, reasoning, and even walking.
Generally, this is a condition of older people. Between 70 and 79, it's felt to affect about 0.2% of the population, so very rare.
The five-time Grammy winner who holds the records for most shows and most consecutive shows at New York's Madison Square Garden announced a 4-month break from touring back in February after he lost his balance and fell during this show in Connecticut. Writing at the time, while I regret postponing any shows, my health must come first.
For more on Billy Joel's condition, we bring in Dr. Leah Kroll, neurologist from Maimonides Health. Thank you so much, doctor, for joining us. So what more can you tell us about what normal pressure hydrocephalus does to the body?
So essentially, normal pressure hydrocephalus is a buildup of fluid in the brain. We have these cavities in the central part of our brain that hold cerebrospinal fluid. And when too much fluid is in those cavities, they can sort of bulge out and compress the surrounding brain tissue. And that's what produces those neurologic symptoms for these patients. The cardinal symptom being difficulties with walking, but patients can also have urinary incontinence and memory problems as well.
What are the biggest symptoms to watch out for?
The number one biggest is walking difficulties, and that can manifest in so different ways. So that could be falls, tripping, stiffness in the gait, difficulty picking your feet up literally off the ground. There's really no exact definition in terms of what someone has to look like to have NPH, and that's part of what makes it a tricky diagnosis. It can look like so many different neurologic disorders.
Are there any other factors that would, or are there any factors that would make someone more at risk for NPH?
Most of the time when someone has NPH, we call it idiopathic, meaning we don't know why it happened. There are some conditions that do have as a secondary consequence NPH. So certain brain surgeries, brain tumors, bleeding in the brain, traumatic brain injuries, strokes, these are all things that may produce NPH, but otherwise there's no real risk factors aside from age.
And we know that this condition is treatable and reversible, right? That's fantastic news. What does treatment and recovery look like?
It is treatable and reversible. The earlier you get diagnosed and start treatment, the better your outcomes are going to be. So some people have 100% return to normal. Other people may not do quite as well. It really depends, and it varies by individual. But essentially, the treatment involves the surgeon placing a shunt in the brain that drains fluid from the head down into the abdomen, relieves that pressure, and allows someone to improve their walking with physical therapy.
I see. And one last question for you, doctor, before you go. And this is a question I'm sure many Billy Joel fans have. Is there any sense of how long Billy will need to recover before he can start performing again?
It's so hard to say. Certainly, we all love Billy Joel and want to see him back as soon as possible. But everyone is different. Some people can bounce right back. Other people, it'll take a longer time. I always tell people that the brain consumes more energy than any other part of the body. And when it's dealing with an illness, that really knocks you out. It gives you a lot of fatigue, a lot of symptoms you've got to deal with, a lot of disruptions to your daily life. So it could be some time.
Yeah, and I do want to add that Billy Joel has said he's thankful for the care that he's getting, and he is looking forward to getting on the stage again very, very soon. And we are also looking forward to that. Dr. Leah Kroll, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Amid record holiday travel for the Memorial Day weekend, there's a rare nor'easter and several storms that could bring possible tornadoes and flooding across multiple states. Chief Meteorologist Lee Goldberg from our New York partner station, WABC, is tracking it all for us. Hi there, Lee.
Hi, Stephanie. Yeah, we're still watching that nor'easter, and it's just off of the Bangor coast here, up the Maine coast. Still spinning back some heavier rainfall. There was 4 inches of snow at Mount Washington. And although it's slowly exiting, there's still some showers wrapping around it into tomorrow. It's still chilly in New England. It'll improve each day, and by Memorial Day, 60s Boston and even 70s in New York City. Where it will not be dry in the middle of the country, day 1 of 4 in terms of severe weather. Tonight, it's North Platte all the way to Oklahoma City. Unfortunately, over the next couple of days, these places are still in line for storms from Texas all the way to Alabama. So whether it's Oklahoma City to Little Rock over to Birmingham, you have to be weather aware and ready for these storms that could cause some damaging winds and even some large hail. And it's not just severe weather, it's a flood threat. It's waves of rain. So there are flood watches out in Missouri and Oklahoma, and we could have up to a half foot of rain in some of these places, even up to 8 inches locally, and heavy rains will extend all the way to Nashville and into the deep south. Stephanie?
So much to look out for. Lee, thank you so much. Ukraine and Russia took the first steps in what will be the largest prisoner exchange since the start of the war. The two sides swapped hundreds of prisoners today. There were emotional scenes of joy in Ukraine as POWs were reunited with their loved ones. This is the first wave of up to 1,000 Ukrainians and 1,000 Russians expected to be swapped over the weekend. The exchange was agreed to during last week's peace talks in Turkey. But tonight, Russia launched more attacks on Ukraine, and the Kremlin is saying there are no plans for another face-to-face meeting with Ukraine. Boeing has reached an agreement in principle with the DOJ to avoid prosecution in the case over 2 deadly 737 MAX crashes. The agreement still must be approved by a judge in the Northern District of Texas. Lawyers representing the families of the crash victims say they hope to convince the judge to reject it. The 2 crashes are from 2018 and 2019 and took place in Indonesia and Ethiopia, respectively. Combined, the crashes claimed more than 300 lives. Coming up, beware of the water this holiday weekend. The beach sightings happening earlier than usual this season. And 5 years after the death of George Floyd, there's a new conflict over the future of the intersection where he was killed. And some say while things did change, much is now back to the way it was.
I think it's worse for the African American. It's keeping us in a state of trauma that we can't get out of. Just remind us of what happened to George Floyd and don't give us no air.
Five years ago, George Floyd was killed by then police officer Derek Chauvin. Now, the intersection where it happened is at the center of a debate. Should it be preserved as a memorial for George Floyd or kept as it was before? Our Alex Perez traveled to Minneapolis to speak with the community and the police chief about what's changed since George Floyd's death and what remains the same.
Get off of his neck! Does he have a pulse? Is he breathing right now? Back on call when he's doing okay.
Anger that triggered worldwide protest. Fury that led to looting and destruction. Emotional outrage that brought communities together. And devastated George Floyd's family.
Come on, Dad.
We were with Terrence Floyd when he first visited the site where his brother was killed.
To be there and to actually stand on the spot, and I could just feel the fear. I could feel the sadness. I could even feel the anger that my brother felt. That's what overtook me, and that's why I collapsed.
He believes while much has changed in the last 5 years, a lot remains the same.
We were just in Minneapolis, looking back at all the violence that happened in that city and in other parts of the country. How do you feel about that now, 5 years later?
It goes back to what my family and I have been standing on since day one of all of this. We still want accountability.
5 years after George Floyd gasped for air, and with former officer Derek Chauvin sentenced to more than 2 decades for his murder, the debate on Floyd's legacy rages on, even here at the intersection where it all happened, now a memorial to Floyd.
Some argue this area should be considered sacred ground, limited to pedestrians only. But the mayor and many others here argue the best way to honor Floyd is to keep traffic moving, which they say would help develop businesses here.
I done been through a lot, man.
Patrick Rode lives in the only home on this block.
Pay attention to the people that are in those situations that have to stay here. Because y'all get to go home. You don't have to stay out here every day. I'm not trying to make no money off this man's name like that, being that he died by the hands of police.
Minneapolis City Council vetoed a measure by the mayor that would have developed the area for mixed use, the council instead wanting to study turning it into a pedestrian plaza. Many of the businesses destroyed by violent protests 5 years ago have been painstakingly rebuilt. Among them, G&L Furniture, owned by Abe Dimage.
You couldn't leave it destroyed the way it was. You had to see this place rebuilt.
Exactly, because you want to give a hope to your neighbor. You want to give a hope to your community. If I turn around and moved away, then everybody will do the same thing. So we are the first one to come back and reopen it. And that gives hope to the people.
And not far from Abe's store, the Minneapolis 3rd Precinct Police Station, also destroyed in those early days of protests as backlash towards law enforcement boiled over. This is how it still looks now.
I remember talking to some of the residents there, and an elderly woman who lives there told me that whole summer she used to come out of the house in the morning with a broom and a dustpan to just sweep up shell casings.
Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara says besides that building, the department lost nearly half of its 900 officers following Floyd's murder as a national movement to defund the police grew, creating a push to decrease law enforcement budgets and reallocate the money to other services. The department, he says, continues to work on bettering its relationship and perception with the public.
We remember those protests across the country calling for the, quote, defund the police. What do you think that meant? And 5 years later, did that happen?
I don't think a lot of people's perspectives have changed. You had people on one extreme, calling to abolish the police. You had a lot of other people saying defund the police. What I think was underneath that idea in general was people basically saying we need to make investments in other things.
And the United States did, for a time. The sweeping reckoning on racism pushed corporate America to improve relationships with communities of color, introducing diversity and equity programs, investing hundreds of millions of dollars. According to a 2023 Pew Research study, among those whose workplace offers a DEI policy, some 72% say each measure has had a somewhat or very positive impact where they work. But 5 years later, many of those programs are now being dismantled. In February, President Trump began issuing a series of executive orders targeting DEI programs.
I've ended all of the so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across the entire federal government and the private sector, and notified every single government DEI officer that their job has been deleted. They're gone. They're fired. You're fired. Get out.
Minneapolis activist Al Flowers believes the abolition of those programs will make it harder for African Americans to advance economically.
In the last 5 years, especially right after we saw a lot of companies move with diversity and equity plans, DEI plans, now we're seeing a lot of those programs being dismantled. When you read and see about that, what are your thoughts?
I think it's worse for the African American. It's keeping us in a state of trauma that we can't get out of. Just remind us of what happened to George Floyd and don't give us no air.
But Floyd's brother Terrence refuses to let go of hope.
I want to see us go forward, move forward. You're not going backwards. No going back.
A hope shared by many who spent the last 5 years calling for change.
Everyone hoping for a way forward. Our thanks to Alex Perez for that update. Coming up, a once popular arts and crafts store will soon be gone. How long you have to visit a Joann's Fabrics near you. And people are getting out for the holiday weekend. How more than 40 million Americans are traveling by the numbers. Many Americans may be feeling a bit pessimistic about the economy, but that doesn't seem to be slowing them down. A record number are expected to hit the road to celebrate the unofficial start of the summer season this weekend. More than 45 million people are expected to travel at least 50 miles from home this Memorial Day holiday, and that's according to AAA's forecast. That's 1.4 million more travelers than last year. That's a new record. 87% of Memorial Day travelers are taking road trips. That's 39.4 million people on the roads this holiday. With 1 million more travelers than last year, Memorial Day road trippers are expected to break a 20-year-old record. 3.61 million people are expected to take to the skies this long weekend. That's a 2% increase over last year. And as travelers look ahead to summer, average flight prices to top destinations are down 7% from last year. That's according to Kayak. The biggest price drops are long-haul flights to places like Sydney, which is down 23%, and Hong Kong with a 16% drop. Wherever your Memorial Day weekend plans take you, we hope you have an enjoyable and really safe holiday. Coming up, the long wait is over. Lilo and Stitch are back in theaters this weekend. We're talking with two of the new movie stars about the live-action take on the adorable alien and why Ohana once again rules the day. But first, how a cruise ship in the South Pacific came to the rescue for a small boat in distress. That's coming up. A once wildly popular arts and crafts store is closing all of its stores. The scary sight off the shores, and a Muppet delivers a rousing graduation speech. These stories and more in tonight's rundown.
In New York's swanky Soho neighborhood, a 37-year-old crypto entrepreneur is being questioned for allegedly torturing a man in his $35,000 a month brownstone rental. The alleged 28-year-old victim told police he arrived in New York from Italy and went to the suspect's home. He claims that's when his passport was taken and he was tortured for more than 2 weeks before finally escaping and running to a traffic cop for help. The alleged victim is now in the hospital. A witness saw the suspect taken into custody.
He didn't look concerned.
Police say they found Polaroid pictures of the victim being tied up and tortured, as well as a gun. Charges are now pending, with at least one butler being questioned. For all those handy with a sewing machine, glue gun, or knitting needles, if you want to visit your local Joann Fabric and Craft store, now's the time. The remaining 440-plus stores will close by month's end. Back in April, the company announced it was going bankrupt after an 82-year run. Shark sightings are starting earlier than usual. This year, just as millions of people head to the beach for the unofficial start of summer, great whites were spotted off Montauk. And while that may be unsettling to hear, new tracking technology is giving scientists their clearest picture yet of how and why sharks are moving closer to shore. Here they are attaching cameras to their backs to monitor interactions with fishermen. Experts insist encounters with sharks are still rare. Nike is preparing to raise prices on consumers for a wide range of things, including footwear, apparel for adults, and equipment as soon as this week. Prices, according to reports, could go up between $2 and $10 an item. In a statement, Nike didn't directly blame President Trump's tariffs, but almost all of Nike's products are made in Asia. A Carnival cruise ship has rescued 4 people and their dogs in the South Pacific. The Carnival Splendor was on an 8-day cruise sailing in the South Pacific when the Maritime Rescue Coordination Center notified the ship of a catamaran putting out a distress call. The Carnival Splendor headed that way and 5 hours later got to 4 people and 3 dogs stranded on a disabled catamaran. Everyone is okay. At the University of Maryland, alum Jim Henson's creation, Kermit the Frog, had the ear of graduates at this week's commencement ceremony. Or rather, commencement, reminding students as they make this great leap.
Life is better when we leap together.
He then led us sing along to Rainbow Connection.
Someday we'll find it, the Rainbow Connection. The lovers, the dreamers, and me.
Disney is revisiting one of its most beloved animated classics. Lilo and Stitch is coming to the big screen this weekend as a live-action film. It's a reimagining of the wildly hilarious and heartwarming story of a lonely Hawaiian girl and the fugitive alien who helps mend her broken family. We've got a clip. Take a look.
So, this is Lilo. And who is this little friend?
That's my new dog.
Nani, I heard what happened last night. Can we talk for a second? Yeah, sure.
His name is Stitch.
Oh, Stitch.
Yay! Joining us now in the studio are 2 stars from the film, Courtney B. Vance, who plays CIA agent Cobra Bubbles, and Sydney Elizabeth Ogden, who portrays Lilo's older sister, Nani. It is great to have you both here in studio. So wonderful to meet you.
Very pretty. Very pretty.
Isn't it nice? Welcome. And I love the names. I love the character names, Cobra Bubbles.
The best name.
Yeah, where's it
in
at?
film.
On the
Clever.
right now.
Oh, it's fine. I did have it.
Very creative. and Nani, I love also. It's actually my younger sister's nickname. Yeah, we call her Nani as well. Yeah. So very sweet names. My goodness, the animated version of this film came out in 2002. Yeah. You were a toddler back then, but what are your memories of the original movie?
That it was my favorite movie of all time.
Really?
And I wanted to be Lilo completely. Yes, totally. Yeah, it was, oh my gosh. I mean, I dressed up as Lilo when I first saw the movie. I dressed up as Lilo. I wanted that red dress so bad. And then I ended up doing a county fair and I walked on stage with her. And then I don't think I took the dress off for like a week.
Oh my goodness. And now you're in the film. How does that feel?
I didn't know that. That's
all these years
Seriously.
later.
It's, yeah, no, I mean, it's surreal. I mean, I feel like I'm still processing everything and I've kind of released that sort of pressure, but I feel like I'm glad to be here. I mean, it's kind of insane. This is truly a dream come true.
Perfection.
Yeah. Oh,
from Hawaii. It's just, you were destined to play that role.
And Courtney, so you portray Cobra Bubbles, CIA
Greatest
agent.
Yes,
it really
Cobra
is. It really is. But Cobra Bubbles goes undercover as a social worker assigned to Lilo and Nani.
The worst social worker.
The worst social worker.
It was very bad.
What
very
was
bad
that
as a
like?
social worker. Very bad.
You're playing a double role, basically.
Yes, I'm playing a double role. But but I was still trying to be the hard line. Just surveying these these people. But it happened when you all were singing the song.
Aloha Oya.
Aloha Oya, and with in the hammock.
Yeah.
And I'm listening.
Oh, I like that scene.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm listening, and it's just, I think that's a moment where I go, okay, all right. You guys, all right, you got me. What do you need me to do? You know, so he's the arc that he goes on was so endearing to me, you know, because that's what happens in family. That's what you have to be able to roll with it. And if you have children, you know, okay, all right, or you know, so it's that journey that I think all of us, all the characters had to get to.
Kind of creating your own family, which is a big deal in Hawaii.
Absolutely.
There's that saying, ohana means family. So if both of you just had to sum it up, what does this film say about family? What it means to belong?
Lilo means lost. And Stitch is like kind of stitching everything together. And you would not think that someone who is an alien would be able to fit into a family like that. And it kind of shows that you don't have to be blood, you don't have to be related. And we also brought in new characters that weren't there in the beginning that I think gave a lot more nuance to the traditional Hawaiian family. And that's, again, like the family that's not blood, it's the family you create. And it's called Hanai. And I think that's a huge thing.
It's so, Disney didn't have to do all of that.
Not at all.
They could have done the
typical remake, exactly. But they reimagined it.
They did, and they did it with love.
Yes.
Which is what the film, to me, is about. I think to all of us is about.
Yeah.
It's about the transformational power of love, and even from outer space, you know, that even
it transcends. Yeah, I totally agree.
Sydney, Courtney, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time.
Nicely
the
done.
live action Lilo and Stitch movie is now in theaters. Make sure you watch it. That is our show for this hour. I'm Stephanie Ramos. Stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thank you so much for streaming with us.